I had this really strange experience a couple of years ago when I was driving home from my boyfriend's house one night. He lived way out in the country at the time. Very dark, you could go miles without seeing a street light. In the middle of the road, I saw in my headlights this dog standing with its back to me. Didn't really seem too unusual. I slowed down, and my next turn was coming up soon anyway, so I just eased on by it. This is when things got freaky. The dog stood still and didn't move its body, but just turned its head to look at me. And I swear, this dog had the face of a human. I mean, there was nothing remotely dog-like about that face. It looked right at me. It was like a man's face had been stretched over the front of its head, and it just stared at me as it drove past. My stomach sank and I sped off. I didn't really know how to react. It just felt like I had seen something I really wasn't supposed to see. I could still see it in the rearview mirror until darkness took over. I was so freaked out that I missed my turn and had to backtrack. I called my boyfriend right after and told him what had happened, and he was pretty freaked out too, but not really surprised. He tells me that all sorts of strange things happen in that swampy rural area, especially at night, and he has his own unsettling stories from growing up there. I've driven that road many times since and have never seen anything like it again, but I can't forget the look on its face. So I have always been very curious about the supernatural. During COVID, I worked as a traveling mechanic for a commuter rail service. I had many responsibilities, but the one, unfortunately, I had to deal with the most was suicides. During the heart of the pandemic, I was going to 2 to 3 a week. I pretty much had to make sure that there was no damage and the train was safe to operate. I had one in late September where the victim was caught up in the power cables between the cars, and I had to assist getting her untangled so the coroner could take the body away. I hadn't seen a body up close since my time in the military, and it was a bit unnerving. Fast forward around a week, and I was traveling back from a call when the weather changed dramatically, almost instantaneously. I am talking a good 20-degree drop and high winds. I was around a mile from my work trailer, and my truck just died. Now keep in mind, I was working long, stress-filled hours during this time. I got out to pop the hood and the truck cab temp dropped. I looked over, and the woman whose body I had helped untangle was sitting in the passenger seat, but I could see right through her. I fell out of the truck and ran across the street. A few minutes later, it began to pour rain and hail. I went back to the truck, and she was gone. I will never forget that night, and I still have nightmares about it. Starting off, when I was a kid, my parents ended up getting a divorce, so my brothers and I ended up staying with my dad on weekends and my mom on school days. My dad ended up finding a partner, and they quickly got a house together. She also had 2 kids, so me and my brother had a room, and her kids got a room. The house was nice, but it was really cheap to be what it was, and it was out in the country, so secluded as well. That's how it usually goes with these stories. It had a decent amount of land and an old barn. The barn was strange, thinking on it now that I'm older. There was a lot of bird cages along with tools and knives. My dad ended up getting rid of most of it. Possibly unrelated, down the hill there was a fire pit surrounded by a circle of crystallized rocks that was clearly out of place. As a kid, my first reaction was to bust open all the rocks with my brothers to see if there was fossils inside. If anyone knows why that would be there, I'm open to ideas, because I've always wondered why someone would do that. It was too far away from the fire pit to have anything to do with the fire, but maybe I'm just overthinking it. Anyways, after a few months, my dad and his partner ended their relationship, and she and her kids moved out. So the room stayed empty, and the door stayed shut, and the next few weeks went by fine. One weekend though, we was getting ready for bed, and my dad always put on some banjo music to help us sleep, for that was the only thing that would pick up out there. I fell asleep only to wake up a few hours later, fully energized and with cold sweats. The radio had a lot of static, which was a bit uncommon for that station, but I thought it could have been the clouds or something and thought nothing of it. Eventually, I got up to use the bathroom and got to the hallway, and I started hearing the sound of boots walking around in a circle rapidly in the empty room with absolutely nothing in it. And I was maybe 5 feet away from the door, so I could hear it clearly. I instantly froze in fear, just staring at the door. After a few minutes, it just stops, and everything got so quiet. All of a sudden, the bedroom door just swings open, and I hear the boots running towards me. I instantly panicked and fell on my butt and quickly picked myself up and ran to my dad's room. I woke my dad up and told him someone broke in. He jumps out of bed and grabs his shotgun, then runs through the whole house, eventually checking windows and doors. All was locked. He got mad, realizing nothing was there, and said it was the video games I played, though I haven't had an experience like that ever or since. After a year or two, I got really into the paranormal and shared the experience with one of my brothers. First time I ever told anyone the story. He said that he definitely thinks that something was wrong with that house, for he had a story of his own. He lived with my dad at the time and told me one night he got up because he was hearing chains being dragged across the front porch. He went to check it out, but my dad was already at the front door with the light off and with a shotgun in his hand. He just looked at my brother and said it's okay and to go back to sleep. My dad never believed in the paranormal. At least he acted like he didn't, but I started to think he was only saying these things to keep us from getting scared or worried. I still get cold chills from just thinking about this whole experience. I've had my fair share of weird, unexplainable experiences since I was a kid. There's the usual stuff mostly, hearing voices calling your name, or having a dream that within a few days comes true, or thinking of someone or something for the first time in a long while, and suddenly it either comes up as a topic or shows up in life. All things I can write off as my imagination or overthinking things, but there's one experience that haunts me to this day, and it's when I worked as a security guard at an old school ground in New England. This was around the start of COVID's quarantine, so no one knew what to do entirely. I remember it was either March or April. The weather was warm, and quarantine was only just being enforced. And since the school was a dorm-based campus, this meant all the students have to leave. I'd been working there since December, so I was used to how lively the school was, and seeing it so empty just made me feel uneasy. What once was a school with some old buildings and mostly new ones, with students who were excited for the sports and their friendships and dramas, was now a small ghost town with no signs of life except for us security guards, which only one of us was on campus at a time. Every day, I'd have to make 2 rounds around the entire campus, going through the old buildings and the new ones, checking every dark corner. For the old buildings, we have 8 student dorms, 1 adult dorm that showed signs of abandonment on the upper floors, overturned beds and such, an old set of condos turned into offices for upper staff, an old house turned into an office space, a church, yes, a church, the boathouse, the library, and the old school building. For new buildings, there was a rec center, the sports center, the science building, and the arts building. When kids were on campus, it wasn't so bad. But when the campus was empty, the school didn't feel like a school anymore. It felt dead, like I was being watched, but not like I'm being watched by students, but by something else, something that didn't want me there. The sun was still up, but on the setting side, which is why I let my guard down, as I mostly thought stuff like this happens at night. The science building and the old school building were connected, so I was crossing over from the newer building to the old one, and upon setting foot inside, I heard something I hadn't heard the prior rounds, let alone the prior days. Footsteps. Running footsteps. They were above me, so I called out and made my way upstairs to see who it was, but there was no one there, and I didn't hear footsteps going up or down. I was about to brush it off when I heard another set run above me, this time on the 3rd floor. I booked it upstairs, calling out, and there was no one there. I checked the doors and lights to see if I was going crazy. The lights were off, the doors were locked. There was no way anyone could get inside. No way anyone could be running about. I got chills and made a call then and there that I skipped the old buildings, as places like the library made me really uncomfortable when the school was empty. I knew I was going to get in trouble later, not the first time for skipping places on my route, but something felt wrong and I didn't feel like messing around with what it was. So my next stop was the Art Center, the newest building. Something of note about the Art Center is that there is a speaker system built into the building that plays music throughout it whenever there are people on campus. The last few tours I went through there, it was silent because no one was on campus. Today was different though. The moment I stepped inside, I heard talking. Indistinct talking, as though two people are talking to each other somewhere inside the building. The building was locked. I knew it was locked because I locked it, but I still needed to go investigate anyways, no matter how much I hated myself for it. The lights inside were off, with light from the setting sun seeping in at the right angles. Aside from the noise of talking, which I still could not make out except for the fact that there were two voices, everything seemed normal. Then I made my way to the second floor, hoping that maybe I'd see who it was, despite them most likely ignoring me going, "Hello? Security?" constantly. But the minute I reached the top of the stairs, the voices stopped and there was a loud, heavy slam. I nearly screamed and ran. I honestly wanted to, but I knew I couldn't afford to or else I'd be in deep shit if someone was there. The area was very open, which allowed me to track the source of the sound easier. It was a large, heavy door that we left unlocked due to it being easier to enter for our tours. It's the one room in the building we kept unlocked because all that's in there is chairs and a table, and some students would often use the room for clubs or watching movies on the projector. I looked around the room, making sure no one was there. However, just before I turned and left, I saw something that I'll never forget. A blue face looking back at me in a reflection. It was shorter than me, so I knew it wasn't mine, and the look on its face looked like someone was struggling to breathe. That was it. I ran. I decided, fuck this, I'm not paid enough for this. I ended the tour early, having only done 3 buildings. Spent the rest of my shift in the guard shack, watching the cameras for anything. I had hell to pay later when my boss came by to take over my shift. He was pissed. I had skirted most of my shift. But once I explained what had happened and why I didn't do the entire thing, his face changed. The man was an old, stubborn British asshole, but he never made that face before or after. He told me 2 stories from the school's history. The first was his own experience of how, when the school was closed for summer, he found himself cornered by a presence in one of the older buildings. He wanted to turn around, but according to him, it felt like something was standing behind him, and if he did turn around, he'd regret it. Eventually, the presence left, and he ended his tour, same mindset I had. The second story is about a pair of boys who were playing on the river by the boathouse. This was in the 1900s or so, during the early days of the school. A pair of boys were playing on a raft in the river when one fell off. I did some digging, and records indicate the boy had drowned. The other boy tried to get help to save his friend, but he was too late. I don't know if the boy's spirit is a blue face I saw, but I knew I saw something. I heard something. I've brushed off most of my weird, unexplainable experiences in life as just my own imagination or coincidences, but I can't shake that day off. Something about that face burned itself into my memory. All tours I did after that had me paranoid and on edge, but I never experienced another paranormal event there again. It made me realize how much we've romanticized these experiences, and honestly, it disturbs me how romanticized they are. Have a paranormal experience of your own? Share it with us at OfficialPhantom.mic at gmail.com. Whether in text or voice recording, we want to hear your story. Thank you for tuning in to Phantom Mic, and remember, if you still feel alone, you weren't listening closely enough.